Hey, everybody, welcome to a bonus episode of the Therapist Take podcast. If you're not familiar with our podcast, you can find it on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Please head over there, like, subscribe, give us a 5-star review, all the things that you're supposed to do to please the algorithms. We'd really appreciate it. This bonus episode is actually just the end of our previous episode where we talked about anger, the role of anger when it comes to couples that are impacted by infidelity. For some reason, I don't know why, YouTube cut off the last 10 minutes of our podcast. And so usually what I do is we record these live, and then after they go live on YouTube, we transfer the video and the audio over to the podcast platforms. Facebook had the entire episode on there, and so I just went and cut that last 10 minutes, and what you're about to see are the final 10 minutes of that podcast. But you don't have to go back and watch the whole podcast or listen to the whole thing to get something out of this final summation, pretty much, because I listened to it all, and Carrie and I summed it up pretty well, and so it holds up on its own. But there is a lot of good content in the original podcast, which is about 45 minutes long, and then this segment is about 10 minutes long. So without further ado, here's the end of the episode called The Role of Anger After Infidelity.
I'm going to start with this, right? There's a reason this is the last thing we're talking about today, but even just making it said, like, you're not going to ask a couple that comes in for treatment for betrayal trauma. You're not going to ask the person who had the extramarital affair, well, tell me about how angry you are and how that affected, the choices that you made. You're not going to start like that.
Right.
But it's also ridiculous and unfair to think that anger hasn't been a part of their.
Yeah. But if I'm the partner, I'm going, oh, that was unfair.
I know. And that's right. And again,
that's why this is
is really complicated, and and both things can be true at the same time, right? Yeah. So but I think we wanted to talk about it too, because we represent couples, not just individuals.
Well, I think, so I think first that to just kind of acknowledge that the anger of the unfaithful partner can very much feel like insult to injury to the partner.
Yes.
Like, how dare you be angry with me or be angry with anything, like after what you've done, and that's fair.
That's fair
for them to feel that way because of what has happened to them, But we also have that expression where we say, from that kind of derives from a quote from M. Scott Peck, where we have a mantra where we say we're going to pursue reality at all costs.
Yes.
Do you remember? We're going back to memory here.
Uh-oh.
Do you remember the actual quote from M. Scott Peck? Mental health.
I've looked it up a couple times and I've seen different versions. But the one that I say to my clients is mental health is a commitment to reality at all costs.
Okay. Yeah. So we kind of condense it down as a mantra for our work here, and probably almost every client that is using sex as a maladaptive coping mechanism will hear us say it, that we're going to pursue reality at all costs.
Right.
So the reality is that unfaithful partners are human beings too, and they feel the same feelings, and they have the right to those feelings.
Right.
And what we end up really discovering is that a lot of times the discomfort with those feelings is what is leading them to the maladaptive behavior.
Right. Absolutely.
So they have to learn to express these feelings, including these uncomfortable feelings, including anger. I don't like calling them negative feelings.
I know.
They're just uncomfortable.
Right. I like that too.
But they're purposeful, so they're not negative.
Right.
And anger is one of those, and I talk with them about is your partner might decide to leave when you start doing this.
Yeah.
And of course, it's not, this isn't day one talk, right? In the beginning, we're very much saying you need to jump through a lot of hoops, bend over backwards, and I think the literature has referred to it as pay compensation for
one down approach.
Yeah, the one down approach, the things that you've done. But eventually, they're going to have to get to the thing that is responsible for the maladaptive behavior, and and it's usually has to do with emotions
Yes,
and uncomfortable feelings.
Uncomfortable feelings.
So, and I'll never forget a particular client that I had, and I'm just going to tell a vague, with to be careful not give out too much identifying information or anything like that. But in a nutshell, with anger, will never forget him coming in and looking at me and say, "What are you doing to me?" Like, I am angry all the time. Yeah. When's this going to stop? Right. And I'm like, dude, like, you have a lot to be angry about. Mm-hmm. And it had nothing to do with
the relationship.
He was angry long before he was in the relationship.
Sure.
You have a lot to be angry about. Yeah. And you've got to let your body and your mind and go through, you got the experience of anger. But there's that fear, though. But what if... Mm-hmm. Like, what
if I become this? What if I lose everyone? Yeah. What if I get stuck in it? Right?
What if the insult to injury experience is too much and she leaves? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I was like, yeah, those are not unreasonable.
They're not
fears. They're
very realistic.
Sure,
right? Mm-hmm.
Sure. That is, and that's the reality. That's a hard reality, but we're going to pursue reality at all costs. Mm-hmm. Because there's not a relationship on this planet that should come at the cost of self.
No.
Right? And that's, if you have buried your anger, probably for very good reason at whatever point in time, in your life, probably when you were a kid, you learned to do this. You buried a part of yourself. Mm-hmm. That's a very important part of your existence. And if a relationship that you're in demands that part of you stay buried, in my view, it's not worth it.
Well, it's not mental health then, right?
It's not. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think ultimately it's not going to be relational health.
Right, because you can't cut a little disease out, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Man, that was good. We finished good. We finished strong.
Good.
Really delivered today. It's that narcissism coming out right there.
Right. And not how many.
I'm going to go home and listen to this.
I'm glad that's funny, but also true, because that's your job.
I will have to listen to it.
You do have to, yeah.
Which, again, anybody listening to this, I should have said this at the beginning, our cadence is best at 1.25 time on the podcast.
I know.
So if you speed us up to 1.25, you're going to be like, dang, they sound pretty good.
I know. I never realized how slow I talk until I do this. It's being a therapist, I think, sitting with people.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, okay. So real quickly to close out on, Carrie and I last week talked about, or a few, I don't know how long ago it was, but it was last week when we talked about the speed reading course that I took, right? And so I did a YouTube short on it and posted it, and but I also, this is like, because it had to do with grad school, I sent it to a bunch of our grad school friends. And I got a few responses back from people that either they took the same course, or they remember sitting in that orientation. They didn't take the course, but they remember getting the pitch. And Whitney, who was on our podcast, several weeks ago, she wrote me this long message saying, like, she remembers hearing them say the exact same thing that I said. When in the southern states, we read like we speak. And she said, I can't remember what certain situation she was in, but it was with some kind of professor or scholar where they're working on something, and she said that, and she's like, and they're like looking at her like, what? And she's like, and she's cites it, like, says that's what they said. And she said they were just like, but she said she could just see BS all over their face.
Oh, really?
I'm like, dang it, like I was scammed.
Oh my gosh.
There's nothing like figuring out 20 years later that you were that whole class. I felt like there were some helpful things about the class.
Okay, but, so it wasn't all of
But to be honest with you, it was learning. What really helped me was I learned an effective way to take notes, which I did use in grad school. But I don't read any faster than I did.
And obviously we don't speak any faster.
Yeah, like
so
if it is a stereotype that they're going off of, I definitely fit it.
You're not challenging it, I guess.
No. I'm like,
so 1.25.
1.25 time.
Oh, goodness.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in, and we're gonna have some good episodes coming up. Carl's gonna come back and talk about his new book, and we will might have a week or so. I think. Are you going to be here next week, or are you taking off?
You're gone next week.
I'm gone next week,
and then the week after I'm gone.
So you're going to take a week off because I'm gone.
2 weeks.
Because I can get somebody to come in.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for being here, and we'll see you next time.